Nutrition itself is a myth because everything you ingest through the mouth is not actually assimilated by the body, not even water. The nutrition we live from is the oxygen and hydrogen present in the air. This means that you really live from the water that is present in fresh air. The human body does not need to ingest anything to be vital. On the contrary, the body tells you to go to the bathroom, not because something is lacking, but because it needs to get rid of an excess. That means that what you ingest is not assimilated, and you need to eliminate it in the bathroom. The human body cannot assimilate something it is not made of. If a baby has colic, diarrhea, and vomiting, what signals is the body sending? Happy, happy? No. On the contrary, those signals indicate that the body is rejecting something. But what does the baby's mother do about it? She takes the spoon and puts it into the baby's throat so that he eats and eats. Even when the baby's body is signaling, I don't want, the mother forces him to eat. Then the mother programs the child saying, if you don't eat, you'll get sick. If you don't eat, you won't grow. If you have adapted to cigarette smoke, does that mean you are more vital? You are not more vital for tolerating more cigarette smoke. It simply means you adapted to the toxins. If you adapted to the toxins of food, you are not more vital. The price of resistance is shortening the time of life. In the same way, the more you eat, the more asleep you are. In fasting, you are more lucid. You are less intoxicated, so that is why you are more connected with your being. Let's say you believe in God right now. Does it free you? No. If you believe now in Inedia, does it free you? No, because belief is your blockage. Belief is what limits you. That is why there are pranic movements, breatharian movements. All those movements are to distract egos, but not to free souls. If you want to change your ego state, great. But have you asked what the soul wants?
Where do dreams come from?
Dreams come from your ego. The addiction in which you find yourself and the way in which you arrived at the addiction is a process to observe. Many mothers say, my baby wants to suck the breast. But for the baby to want to suck the breast, one must observe what happened during the 9 months. For you to understand better, the mother and the father do not create the baby. This must be clear. You will understand it soon. What the mother and the father do begins in the zygote. The zygote is like a small cave. And in that cave, there is nothing, only a medium. In that medium, a stem cell manifests, and afterward the stem cell grows through self-division, and there is no nutritional connection here. Then the umbilical cord forms. This is another topic separately, formed by certain conditions, but the baby is born there. That manifests in the mother's womb. The mother is only the medium where the baby can manifest. Here we are in a game of the Matrix. This is a video game where there are rules, but the baby manifests through its consciousness. We have seen in the movie that without consciousness, there is nothing. So the consciousness that you are manifests in the mother's womb. Everything you see here needs a consciousness. Even those little feathers need consciousness in order to exist. So in the illusion, consciousness cannot exist. It is difficult to understand, but nutrition does not exist. You are a manifestation of consciousness. Through the self-division of the cell, the body grows. The cell itself is nothing. It is only a stem cell. What forms the cell is the environment, because when you put a stem cell in a heart environment, it will grow into a heart. If you put a stem cell in a lung environment, lungs will grow. The environment really forms the body here. Rather, it is an information that comes from around. You live from information. Later, we will see this scientifically. So what thoughts does the mother have? That is the information. If the mother thinks, I am a mother, and the mothers produce milk. In the same way as there are women who give milk and women who do not give milk, there are also men who give milk. So what is that about giving milk? It is the parents' idea, and their ideas are the cause of what happens. Any confusion in beliefs manifests. My belief in that is the basis. So it is not something natural, rather it is the programming of the mind that manifests that, and the essence is to consider to what degree that information is necessary. That is why it is important to be free. If the mother's mind is free of confusions and programmings, she is not going to pass it to the child who sucks the breast, for example. Can you understand what I'm saying? You program something. So the one who programs is really an ego character. That is why I said procreation should only exist in free beings, not in ego characters. Because two egos are going to form another ego. They are going to form another jailer of the soul. That's how it is. It is logical and normal. The mistakes of parents for transmitting an ego character do not matter. What matters is that the person does not continue the patterns. It is important to keep alive what they have learned and experienced by themselves. In the agenda they have for the future, awakened people are not on the list. I don't see light in the new generation. Do you see anyone from the new generation here? No, they are asleep. The new generation is very distracted. They already have their toys to distract themselves, but they are unhappy, obviously because distraction is not needed. So here is born the belief in sucking the breast. It would be perfect if afterward the mother also did not eat. But what does the mother do? The mother grabs the spoon and puts it in the baby's throat. The mother says, "Now, eat, eat, eat," even though the baby says, "I don't want." She forces him to eat, and then programs him saying, "If you don't eat, you will get sick. If you don't eat, you won't grow." Programmings and more programmings. So in the end, obviously, the child is going to execute those programs he learned, and that is why the child wants the attention of the mother. So the child grows obedient. If the mother does not seek love and does not transmit the search for love, the child will say, "Well, leave me alone, I don't want anything from you." But the child wants love because he learned to search for love. So that is the beginning of all confusion. So then a small fetus is formed with tiny little legs and an umbilical cord that is going to transmit. Many say the mother is feeding it. If the mother feeds, then the blood that flows from the mother and the baby should be identical, but it is not like that. So what is happening? So the mother can only feed, if you want to use the word feed, what the body needs. And what do you need? Right now you only need what you are composed of. And what are you composed of? Hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and some carbons and their molecules. Nothing more. Only these components can serve you if you want to talk about nutrition. If the carrot you ate does not have those elements, where are you going to take the carrot? To the bathroom. Everything you put in your mouth, you take it to the bathroom, because your body cannot assimilate something from what it is not composed. Or if you eat, for example, a week only lamb meat, then you should become a lamb if you assimilate what you are eating. But it is not like that. What you are assimilating, what is it? It is air, breathing. That is why you breathe. Here the baby cannot breathe, so the mother breathes for the baby. So here there is a membrane, and through the membrane, only those components of breathing pass, nothing else. Blood does not flow through the membrane. Blood only serves as a medium for transportation, and then comes the filtration of that from which you live. And that is why you only need to breathe. But breathing is not under your will. You also breathe when you sleep. So everything you need is outside your will. You live perfectly. You do not need anything from anything. It is that simple. Understood? So now am I done? But this is the basic part.
But there must be a willingness to look at oneself, a willingness to self-observe, right? Or at least the very act of having that willingness. I'm going to sit down and observe myself.
What is needed?
At least that interest, an internal action.
Good. What is needed?
Mainly an intention for change.
You feel fed up because you have tried to get out of that hamster wheel in one way, but you do not find it. You only find anxiety in yourself. Some try to distract themselves with something spiritual. Others really do nothing and just listen and give themselves the opportunity to listen to themselves.
But there is a moment of choice, a moment of choosing to say, I keep letting myself be carried by my vices because I am weak. And there is a moment of choice where you say, well, enough. And there is an action. I stop and I want to observe myself.
Yes.
I want to know myself. They talk about meditation, well, I know millions of meditation techniques, but for me the basic one is to sit and observe oneself without any kind of intention, which is also doing something. It is a not doing anything, the not doing. There is a moment in your life where you say, I have to do something in order to do nothing.
Well, observing is not doing anything, because you are not expecting anything. It is to observe. If you are analysing yourself, that is not observing.
I want to get out of my pain.
Yes, but who hopes to get out of the pain?
It is like using the demon to reach divinity itself. If I didn't have that motivation for action, I wouldn't do it. I find very interesting everything you say, but there has to be a moment in which I have to do something in order to reach those conclusions. That's something like saying, tomorrow I will sit and observe. But sitting to observe instead of going and putting my energy into the cinema. For example, instead of going to the cinema and having a beer, I replace it with making a firm decision with myself, saying, no, I will observe this process. I will not let myself be carried by old habits of thought and emotions.
Well, willpower is really your being acting in your body. That is will, it is free will. When the being acts here, that is really when you can observe. The being will always say no to the illusion. The one who says yes to the illusion is really the ego. There you have to observe neutrally. Okay. By understanding that there was no free will, and in that observation you release more and more of the ego. This requires observation. But to reach that observation, you must first have an annoying life. Because young people are still with their illusion of distraction. So you reach a limit point where you can't stand it anymore, and you decide that you must make a change. If the person chooses to keep taking pills or taking drugs, there is a moment when he will say, I don't want this anymore. For that action, will is required, but most people prefer to distract themselves. But that is each one's choice. Trying to convince someone else does not work. That is why you must also let the other person have their own choices. It is important to allow the other to make mistakes. Let your family get vaccinated or whatever it is that intoxicates them. Let them. That is love. If I try to convince them, who is trying to convince them? An ego, because it is afraid it will lose them. Again, you're in the same confusion. Rather, you must allow the other to make their own decisions and see them as a soul companion. You must not see the other as my possession, my child, my partner. Nothing must be forced. Allow the other to have their own experience. That is love. And if there is a moment where you see that there is nothing in common, well, you follow your path and I follow mine. But no, there is no sacrifice in love. Where is the sacrifice in love? Understanding something about quantum physics so you understand. This life is a video game.
We talked about it last time about not doing.
Yes.
But here you are doing. You say the key is to not care, to be indifferent. So it's not that some part of our living is useless. Do you remember that I told you I help people with mental health issues? The important thing is that I do not have any expectations. Even knowing how to let them go is what you propose. It's not that nothing is ever done.
Well, you must follow the intention of the being, but you don't allow it. You don't know the intention of the being, and while you believe you have an idea and follow the ideas of others, you will continue again blocking the being. That is why the solution is to do nothing, and let yourself be surprised by what arrives in your life. For that you must first learn to not do, because you are accustomed to doing, and in that doing, you get confused. You get tangled in confusion with your old habits.
So what you are doing here now is it comes from your connection with your being and from aligning with what needs to be done?
I am always doubting and questioning everything. That is what I'm doing all the time. It's not that I say, oh, I'm enlightened. On the contrary, always doubting and questioning. So every time I meet someone, I am observing who is really speaking? Because I feel Markus doesn't want to speak. Because what benefit do I have here in this talk? None. But the being has an intention here. And through the being that is present, one can enjoy a conversation. You can enjoy nature without attaching, like, oh, I want it again and again. That is the main thing. At the moment, you enjoy it without attachment. But you must be a good observer, because they have conditioned you to always expect a result. And there, one gets confused very quickly. Well, something a little complex for many here is the world in which we live, the circus, the show, and it has 3 dimensions of space. Is that clear? 3 dimensions of space. And one more dimension, a linear one of time. Here, there are 4 dimensions in total. So here we are in the astral field. Let's say it like that, although it is not the correct word because astral is from stars. So it is not correct. It is the mundane world, or rather the world of matter. The mundane world itself comprises 5% of what you are seeing, no more. And the world of visible matter plus the world of non-visible matter is approximately 30%. And the remaining 70% does not exist as matter and cannot be seen. Visible matter makes up only 5%. Is that clear? We also know that in the universe, the remaining 70% exists as dark energy because it is merely a manifestation, not something that can be seen or measured. On the contrary, it is through that invisible presence that things manifest. Is that clear? That is what we see only here. So here we have 0 and 1. 0 and 1 is really your past. Everything that happens in the illusion of the matrix is stored as data. 0 and 1. Here, there is no dimension, although it is called a dimension. There isn't. And here there is. Here is the illusion. 0 and 1 are data. So everything that happens there is stored in data. And it is your past. The past is not something of space and time. It is only information. It is 0 and 1. Nowadays, it is very simple since there exist programs that analyze all movements of the stock market. The entire stock market is actually predictable, so it is known. With more data I can predict a future. Artificial intelligence programs exist that with many data can predict the future. And the stock market is managed in that way, but a stock market parallel, not the one available to ordinary humans. Is that understood? Actually, the name in the stock system is Aladdin. Aladdin from the diviner, that is the name of that artificial intelligence that calculates future possibilities in the market, not for the whole public. So they can foresee, but others behind know the future better, and that is why they make money from it. The poor really earn nothing. So it is nothing more than data. It is not something of time. Time outside of that illusion does not exist. There is no time, only data. Understood? We are here speaking, let's say, in the 5th dimension. And then we have here beings, here in the 6th dimension. And those are consciousnesses, or beings, however you want to call them. So the being that you are, with the knowledge obtained, will manifest something here which is linear time, the 4th dimension, because they act together. The 4th dimension is a set with other dimensions to manifest something. I am speaking of quantum physics. So I am not speaking of something I'm making up. So without consciousness, nothing will exist. The 4th dimension is nothing but a projection. So to project, I need a consciousness. So the problem here is that a consciousness is born here, and that is called a baby. That is why a baby cannot hurt itself, because the consciousness of the being knows exactly, through calculations, what is the best possible possibility. That is why a child is not going to fall off stairs, for example. When is the baby in danger? It's when the mother's possessiveness is on top of him. The mother's overprotection causes the harm, because the baby cannot hurt itself, since it knows and calculates the best possible future. The baby knows where it can get hurt. It can calculate, if I follow that path, I will hurt myself. And that is why a baby, it has been observed this in children, or rather babies who start to crawl, with indigenous children, because the mother is uninterested. She leaves the baby to the side, and the baby does not get close to the fire, does not get close to a knife, does not get close to a precipice, to a place where he could get hurt because he knows with his consciousness that causes harm. Why would he do it? And that intuition is lost. When is that divine baby lost? It is lost when a layer is created on top of the being called ego. With the ego, you lose that information, that connection. And that ego generates an independent database. And you call that your mind. And you can observe it. When does that happen? Why do we all burn ourselves? Why do we burn ourselves with a candle, for example? What sense does that make? The point is, the baby knows the fire is hot, so why would he touch it? An animal knows the fire is hot, why would I touch it? It's like the study of the 100th monkey. It means there was an observation where they gave a monkey the possibility to open a coconut. He had never seen a coconut before. So the monkey learned, and another monkey learned, how to open a coconut by observing. And then others observed it. And once the 100th monkey learned it by observing, suddenly all the monkeys in the world knew it because in that moment it reached a collective database. And after that it no longer had to be repeated. So, what experience do you need to have? If everything is already experienced and the being already has the necessary information, why do you need to burn yourself again? Or does someone want you to burn yourself? Does someone want you to isolate your mind? Because that mind, right now, our mind, is easily programmable. Just repeat a lie 1,000 times and you believe it. That is how easily you are manipulated. You are functioning like a completely programmed robot so that you do not access the best possibilities, and so you keep repeating patterns. Because that's what happens. You repeat that whole movie. And they want you to repeat it. That way, you repeat it with the character, and then the character forms his idea of his experience. What experience do you need to have? If you are an illusion generating something isolated, it is useless for anything. It is only useful to manipulate you. So the moment you put that aside, what is going to happen? In that moment, you have intuitions. Suddenly you do something and you know, I have to do this because this is the intention of the being. But you see that calling, mainly in the early morning when you wake up, an idea comes. But then your egoic thought enters and again you forget. That is why the less activity of the character, the more you eliminate the ego automatically. If you do not give power to that ego, then you do not give power to thought. What is thought? It is the lie you are thinking. Mind comes from lie in Latin. Everything is a lie. And you follow the lie, like a faithful sheep. They will take me sooner or later to the slaughterhouse, but there I go. Simple and easy to understand what is happening.
You have spoken many times about how the human being has his greatest problems because of the search for inner love. It is intuition what we are, and it is what we try to discover, to return to the essence. The essence is this that is in the 6th dimension.
That is right. That is truly consciousness. The 6th dimension is like that. But really you are here like a drop in the sea, and you are here in the sea, which is the being. Or rather the true soul. There is only one soul. It is the one. Because we are there like drops in the sea. But they have placed layers on top of us. Those 6 main layers above you are not a fixed space. They are illusory. I know at first it sounds a little complicated. The point is that you form an ego that isolates you. So with your ego, there is no way out. Because you act automatically. When you know the other is me, automatically you find love in yourself. Seeking love outside is something absurd. You seek love because you believe that you are separated. If you know the other is me, why would I go seek love? I will give the best of myself to the other because the other has the same intention. And that is human coexistence. That is living in a human body. Everything else is pure confusion. Therefore, what do you have to do? Nothing. So because all that intention of understanding the manifestation, that is how you manifest yourself here. It is only a projection. It is like a screen. Nothing more. So the screen cannot nourish me. Is that clear? Are we good?
Yes, I wanted to ask, because after listening to this, the doing nothing, the question is absurd. But for my mind, it is not nothing. What would a day of not doing anything be like? Because if not doing anything means having no intention in my actions, There is a fine separation where I say, for me, doing nothing is sitting and doing nothing. I don't know, maybe I'm a bit disoriented, but I don't understand what a day of not doing anything would be like.
Then observe who does not understand, who doesn't understand, and who wants to understand it. That is the problem. So what must you do? Don't think. Stay still, and let yourself be surprised. Are you so conditioned that you cannot do nothing? Simply do nothing. Maybe you want to stay in bed, then stay in bed, and observe at which moment the idea arises. For example, I have to wash my clothes, I have to do this, my mother is waiting for me. And again you're inside a movie when what you should do is observe at which moment you hook onto the illusion. And for that you must have a moment of stillness, simply observing, and observe also the nonsense you are thinking. And from there an activity comes, but that activity comes to you. And when you realize, this activity doesn't have any sense, what am I doing? I will withdraw from this. It is finished. Then I let myself be surprised by what arrives in my life. The very, very beautiful thing is that everything you need arrives in your life. Absolutely everything you need. Because the being, if you give it the power, knows the best future for you. That is why more or less Jean-Pierre Garnier-Mallet explains it too with the double, but he confuses the double with the negative. Because in the physical world, you need a negative, because it is duality. That is something else. But he gets a little confused because he says, consult your double, when he should say, consult your being. But people consult the ego again. That's why I say it's a bit confusing. Forget your desire to know something, because your being knows the best future, and the being will guide you in what you have to do. But for that, I must take an act without self-interest in my activity, letting it go, and that's it. But you are so conditioned again into the question, so what should I do? What should I do in the doing nothing? And it is really, just observe. Observe a child. If there is nothing to do, he says, well, let's play then. And he plays. There are thousands of swings outside waiting for you, so go out and put your feet in the sand. Walk and expect nothing. Just feel your body in that sand. Feel what is around you. Feel the wind. That is living, the way a child does. Without an interest, just experimenting, playing. That is living. So there it is. You must observe at what moment you are thinking again like a bored adult with his conditionings. And that requires a time of observation so that little by little you return to what you really are. A being that only wants to explore and play. Nothing more. There is nothing to do here. There is no goal. There is no end.
And who is observing, the ego or the being?
It is always the ego.
So you never end up destroying it?
No. We're not going to the bathroom. Calm down. The being already knows the information. Why would it need to observe? Why would it need to think? It is present at every moment. It is as if it already has the necessary and complete information, and from there it manifests. Why would the being need to analyze or reflect? It already automatically, through the calculation of the future, has a whole range of options. Which one do I choose? And it happens instantly. It is not a reasonable thought like we do. So the being does not need to discover something. The character is the one that needs to discover what is in the mind and what is blocked, leading it to follow patterns like a spiral. The character does activities that are useless. So what must you do? You must realize that what I am doing is useless. Not that you listen to me speak. That is useless. You are tangled again. You must observe. What am I doing? What is the intention behind what I am doing? For example, the cigarette. Why do I want a cigarette? Then I observe, maybe it is because I am seeking attention from my family. Maybe it is because I feel isolated. How did I arrive at the idea of feeling isolated? That is observing. And that observer is obviously the character. The character will not detach from that habit because I can tell you, just quit smoking, done. But you won't do it, because you have not reached full understanding of what is happening. You need observation as a tool to reach comprehension, because you, as an illusion, can only reach a comprehension, not a consciousness. The consciousness that you already are will not arrive at something it already is. So you, trying to reach consciousness, because again you involve the ego with its ideas. What is enlightenment? How do I reach more consciousness? And again you manifest the ego. The ego is actually the blockage of consciousness. So you must really remove the ego. And that is why I said, when you eliminate the ego completely, you are in full consciousness. But mainly you have passed through moments of clarity, and then you, with the ego, seek that moment of consciousness again. And thus, you are confused. That will not work, because the ego is the blockage to reach consciousness. So how will it work? When you use a technique, who uses a technique? Someone who does not trust. If you have full trust and say, that is me, I have understood, why would I get involved? Why would I want control? Only someone who does not trust wants control. The ego says, I want to be enlightened. I want to reach more consciousness. And there again is the great confusion.
So it would be that at the moment in which I see through self-observation that something is conditioning me, the idea would not be to eliminate the ego. I feel that you are saying the idea is not that the ego disappears.
That's right.
But that the ego understands through that observation of the conditioning to stop that illusory game and let consciousness manifest through it.
That's right.
That there is no need to eliminate the ego, but rather to surrender to the evidence that it is the consciousness of the being that manifests through it.
Yes. So you observe through your character in what degree you still give importance to the illusion. And at the moment you remove that importance from the illusion, that consciousness manifests by itself without you getting involved. But any time you get involved, there will always be a blockage. Eliminating the ego will not work. It will become more subtle, more cause level, not so present. But you must observe, because one can get confused. One thinks, I'm fine. But who is the I? Again, the character. One can get confused very, very easily. That is why consistency is required in observation. And obviously the one who observes is the character. And you realize that it makes no sense at all. Because maybe young people think, well, I can still do something there. If you have understood that whole trap, what do you want to achieve? To reach understanding, everything you do only serves to create a thicker layer of ego. And obviously in that way, the being cannot manifest. The thicker the layer of ego, the less possibility the being has to manifest. The problem, through food.
Sitting down to meditate is a way of having a space and time to do or not do, because now I get confused. If you speak of meditating as observing, because of course sitting all day is complicated in the rhythm of life, but I can observe all day, or is observing the same as meditating? Or do you meditate, you sit and meditate, or do you simply live observing?
Meditating can serve you to realize that what you are doing serves for nothing. So why would you want to return to your modern world if you have understood that it serves for nothing? Why do you keep meditating? You use meditation only as a tool to distract yourself. And that is the confusion. Do I make myself clear? If you have reached an observation, it is better to say observation, because with meditation comes a paradigm, an idea that you have about meditation, doing it like Buddha. When did Buddha become enlightened? When he surrendered, not in the form of meditation, because it was only a repetition. At the moment he surrendered, he said, no more. No more of this protocol. No more of that protocol. I surrender. I do nothing. In that moment came mental clarity, not in a process, not in a technique, not in a practice. Many get confused. At some point you question, what am I doing in meditation? What am I waiting for here, observing? And why am I still attached to my material world? What does illness want to tell me? What is happening? If I observe that and reach the cause, it is solved. And each time you recognize it, the less you will return. Do I make myself clear? The understanding grows bigger and bigger, and each time you observe yourself, again, I gave power to my ego. And the best tool is the food you eat, because you can observe it easily. It has an impact on you, and you can observe to what degree you have become confused.
Where do dreams come from?
Dreams come from your ego, your isolated mind.
So it's something your mind creates?
You can observe when you have a heavy dream, for example, emotionally. During the day you had a problem, so you take that into your dream, and then you try to digest it, and it causes a mixture of many things. On one hand, you generate the dreams through the data you have from the lie, but at the same time, it is an external tool to manipulate you. They make you think or dream. That is really the great problem, your mind. Well, to clarify, here you have your individual mind. Juan, just as an example. But Juan's mind is connected, since Juan's mind is in a football club, so everyone who is in that football club is connected there. The people at the club are connected in some way. So information is exchanged there, and many times you think stupidities and you say, where did that come from? And in that moment, other people's thoughts can influence you, and he is also connected with others. And so there is a mill of thoughts where there are many stupidities, because when a message comes, it is direct and clear. The being can give you a message, but the dream itself is really very mixed up. And that is why you must not interpret dreams much. It is what you provoke by connecting yourself, and you form, unconsciously, a bond there. If I attach myself a lot to that illusion, the less you get hooked, the less effect it has on you. The more value you give to the mind, the more power that has. Then external manipulation comes. Today, they can put any nonsense in your head and you believe it. That is why manipulating the mind is very easy. When you know how it works, it is pure data. You put it there. It is like I now record something and send it directly to you. It is very simple, very easy. Today, there exist devices that, at a distance, can send you any information, any lie into your head, and then you dream with a cocktail of everything mixed together, and in the end you try to interpret it. That is why you must not give value to the dream, because you do not know what the source of the dream's thoughts is. If it comes from the being, there is no wrong interpretation. But in dream interpretation, there is a lot of confusion. There is a lot of egoic thought and egoic confusion. Well, let's go back to the main topic, addiction. Well, you understood how you manifested yourself. Then you know basically what the components of your body are. From that alone comes what serves you as nutrition, if you want to speak of nutrition, because nutrition itself, what you put in your mouth, does not serve for anything. Not even water is assimilated, because we already saw that oxygen and hydrogen are in the air, meaning water is in the air. With only breathing, you stay vital. You do not need to ingest more. On the contrary, observe, why do you go to the bathroom? If I need water, why do I go to the bathroom? You go to the bathroom because it is excess, not because you lack. You expel things that do not serve. And today your body works, as I already mentioned, like a water mill. Well, here we have water, the water in blue, pouring. The water enters, and then the water comes out again. It enters, it leaves, it enters, it leaves. That is how your body works too. It works based on stimulation. You stimulate your body and it reacts. But not out of necessity, but because it got used to stimulation. It enters and leaves. You truly do not assimilate food, because why do you go to the bathroom? You don't assimilate anything. You cannot assimilate something of which you are not composed. Obvious and logical. So your stimulation is an important point to understand. How did I arrive at stimulation? And how did I suffer to reach that stimulation? Through whom? And how do I normally react? Through the initial stimulations. Mothers or fathers know, if they remember, how does a baby react? With colics, diarrhea, and vomiting. So if a baby has colics, diarrhea, and vomiting, what is the body saying? Happy, happy? No, the baby's body is saying, I don't want that. So the body reacts in defense. And who gets sick the most? Who gets sick the fastest? Children. So you intoxicate them, and how do they react? With mucus. And what is mucus? Mainly excess. Mucus is proteins and carbohydrates that your body expels. And why is that? Why does my body expel proteins? Because the proteins you give it are useless. Nothing you give it is useful. It will expel everything. And healthy children are more vital. And for that reason, their body reacts perfectly. The toxin enters, and the body expels the toxin. Meaning, the faster you get sick, the healthier you are. Understood? The easier you get sick, the healthier and more vital you are. And you can observe that in children.
But they get used to it quickly.
Children do not get used to it. What is happening there?
To solve that situation of children, what can we do? Because now we cannot stop feeding them.
But you cannot stop feeding them because you are an addict. So the child will copy you. If you drop the addiction, you help him. You must work on yourself first. It is like if you tell your son, don't use the phone, but you use the phone. How is that going to work? The child only copies you. So if I am confused, I will confuse the other. That is the problem. That is why I said confused parents should not procreate. They will create another confused being. Children copy their parents. So what is happening? Look here. Why are children more vital? You see, children have high vitality. And by around 80 years old, well, with luck if you are still alive at that age, but well, vitality decreases. And what is happening? What is that curve? It is called the resistance curve. You resist the toxin. When resistance increases, it means you are adapting to the toxin. Adaptation, through vaccines, food, you take a shortcut to death. Simple as that. Through vaccine food, you become resistant to your paellas, to your barbecues. Well, a shortcut to the grave, because it is intoxication. For example, if you adapted to cigarette smoke, are you more vital? No. In the same way, if you adapted to toxins in food, you are not more vital. That is the price of adaptation. The price of resistance is the shortcut to the grave. Simple and easy to observe. What does that curve represent? The production of melatonin. Melatonin is what your body assimilates into DMT. DMT is dimethyltryptamine, and it is a hallucinogen used in ayahuasca or in ceremonies to give you more lucidity. But you already have the function of lucidity built into you. So it is seen for months or even a year. There is no production of melatonin. Why? Because you are already connected to the source. The being is already there. Why would the being need to be more enlightened? Here the ego is growing. Here we have, more or less, age 15. And then really the production of DMT goes down. What grows at the same time? The resistance. Here resistance comes. The more you resist, the more DMT is reduced, because your body adapts to this and to food. Another important point to observe, your body produces antibodies so that you can eat. What sense does that make? What is that? That is called resistance. So that you can eat toxin, your body generates antibodies. But those antibodies kill melatonin. That is why the more you eat, the more asleep you are. That is why during fasting, you are more lucid. You are less intoxicated. And that is why you are more connected with your being. And that is why they want to keep you as a consumer slave. Because a consumer slave will consume, will intoxicate his body, and will keep himself asleep, just with the intoxication we give him. This is science, this is all known, it's not my invention. But you are attached to your drug, and you are thinking, oh, he wants to take away my drug. And right now, you are thinking, what am I going to eat later? Well, I know how self-deception works.
How to reach a nadir and not die in the attempt?
Well, it's easy.
It's easy?
Yes, of course, not try. That's it. Because who wants to try something? The character, and again you are trapped. We see that a lot in the movie, a lot of confusion there. I could answer your question, but it's better if you answer the question yourself. What does living in inedia mean? Do I need to have an idea of inedia? Do I need to have an idea of where I want to achieve something? Who wants to achieve something again? That's why all that Breatharian movement is useless.
Freedom?
Freedom? No. How would that be possible? Freedom means having no ego. If you keep the ego, there is no freedom. And we will see that in the movie in more detail, so that the confusion becomes clear. Freedom means freeing yourself from dependencies. What is needed to live from inedia? You see it in the movie. From belief. I have to believe in this. I have to believe that I live from I don't know what. And again, you are trapped in a belief, and there is no freedom. Understood? We will see it in detail later. Are you following me so far?
A quick question.
Yes.
Do you know more people like you who are capable of living without eating and without drinking?
Very few, actually. I haven't seen them yet.
In countries where there is truly a lack of food, many people die, especially children.
Yeah, but it's okay.
Is it okay?
The problem is that you can't convince them. It is as if I want to convince you right now to change your eating habits. Will you stop eating? No. It's like I tell you, I'm going to give you freedom. You don't have to eat. Will you stop eating? No, because if you have a buffet in front of you, you will take it. And even if you have the buffet and don't take it, it's the same. Because first, you have to reach fundamental understanding.
A small child who understands nothing and dies anyway.
Yes, because he is programmed to die, because he believes he must die. That is why it is important, first, that to reach your inedia, or to free yourself, you must eliminate the belief. If you have in your subconscious a belief that I need food, it will not work. So first, to eliminate the belief, you must understand why you eat. Anyway, throughout the movie, there are various aspects that clarify things about food. And then the question comes, so understand why I'm eating. First, because of belief. Second, my body has gotten used to the drug, meaning it got used to the intoxication. But getting used to intoxication does not mean that it needs it, because your body goes more in the direction of illness. And third, emotional. If you have not resolved the addiction where food is based on what? On the anxiety of your life. If you don't change that, how will anything change? So you will only change one drug for another. First you eat, and then you start smoking. Or later you need alcohol, because you can see alcoholics have alcohol, and then they start smoking because they can't handle anything else. They need to calm anxiety. So if you have not eliminated the anxiety, you only change the drug, meaning you have understood nothing. That is why it is so important to understand, why am I anxious? And then food is only the reaction to the anxiety I have in my life. That is the basic part.
Beliefs can also help you, for example, to eat less or to arrive at inedia. Because in the movie Living on Light, people reach inedia in different ways. For example, some think it's through sunlight, others through prana, others simply believe it's the spirit, and it works for all of them. Maybe it was a side effect.
But look, let's say you believe in God right now. Does it free you? No. If you believe now in inedia, does it free you? No. Because belief is your blockage. Belief is what limits you. So what do you believe in? The system doesn't care. That is why there are pranic movements, breatharian movements. All those movements are to distract egos, but not to free souls. If you want to change your ego state, great. But have you asked what the soul wants? As long as you limit yourself to a better ego state, you are distracting yourself with 1,000 things. Don't think about what you are. Obviously, the ego only thinks about its illusion and what it wants to achieve.
What I mean is that in the documentary,
we will see it in detail, and then I will explain it to you in more detail. You will see nothing but happy egos. You will not see liberated beings. That is the problem. Do you understand where the block is? Observe. Who is not in agreement? He is the problem. Who thinks? He is the problem. Observe, 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 observe. It is the blockage of wanting to know, wanting to achieve, wanting to be in a state. That is the block. The natural state is in you. You do not need food. So it is not about reaching that state. If you eliminate the cause, and the cause is your life in anxiety, your search for love, in that moment, if I eliminate that, you eliminate your cravings. then you really eliminate your habit of eating. That's simple. It is the ego trying to achieve something. If you keep the ego alive, you will keep all the anxiety alive. And then you will only maintain anxiety in another form, just sitting in meditation for 12 hours. What good is that? Nothing. Because who is sitting on the cushion waiting for something? You keep alive what you are not. And that is the great invitation. We still have a long topic left. Illness, but maybe we will explain it in the middle so it becomes clearer. Last question here.
How do we understand that animals eat and kill each other in the food chain?
We have a beautiful platform to play, meaning nature balances itself. If there are too many antelopes, then more lions will grow, and everything is put into balance. Everything is harmoniously balanced, and it is not that they eat just to eat and to have pleasure. They don't have the idea of nutrition. Rather, it keeps balance in nature, in our playground. So you have to see the little bird eats the fruit, but it is not assimilating it. It poops it out so that the seed stays elsewhere. And there another tree can grow. It is a balance of distribution. If there is contamination on the earth, ants will fix it and balance it again. Or whatever example of nature you want, it finds its balance. And it works automatically. Obviously behind it there is a consciousness that generated the manifestation, but it is another consciousness. If you see it, nature does not consume. Pets are something else, since pets are confused like their owners. Nature balances itself and is harmonious, and it serves so that we can play, but not so that we become addicted, not so that we have a programming. We have a higher consciousness, so we have the capacity to free ourselves and play in a different way, more connected inside with ourselves, and not so connected with what is outside. That is the intention of the being, to play in the human body. And that can be done only if the being is not blocked by the ego character. All right? So we make a small pause here before starting the movie.